Hi, Lisa Shermerhorn here, and welcome to my show Where Truth Lies. And I am thrilled and excited to be talking to Honey C. Golden, who is also a partner of mine. We do a lot of work together in the quantum area, and I'm putting this book together on We Are Quantum. And so many people ask, well, what exactly is quantum? And all the people who I've been working with, everyone has such a different take on it, and it comes from a different perspective. And Honey is a healer, and she is a communicator with her higher self. She also investigates hidden history and communicates with extraterrestrials. And I've also seen you do a lot of work with people, with the intuitive, medical intuitive type of work you do as well. So welcome, Honey, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, so fun. I love the quantum. To me, it's like the real reality. And I think sometimes we get stuck in this reality and we don't think about what's the big reality. And that's where what I want to talk about today is the
Yep.
really big reality. But I will share a little bit about myself first, if you like.
Yeah, if you'd like, and then go into, I know you were pretty awake as a child, weren't you?
Mhm.
Yeah. I may have been, but I didn't know that's what it was. You were more aware than I was.
I was lucky. Yeah, I got to come into a hippie parents who they were the weird hippies who did do a lot of substance abuse. There wasn't a lot of substances going on in our family, even alcohol. So we didn't do any of that stuff in my family, and they were kind of the oddballs in the hippie community. But my dad was extraordinarily spiritual, and he was doing things that were totally weird to most of the people around him. And mostly it was writing and painting.
Hmm.
But he was delving into things like the precession of the equinoxes, the Mayan calendar, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm going hoarse. But he was doing all of that when I was a kid. And I remember coming in, when I actually entered my body when I was about 18 months to 2 years old. And I was like, I finally got in, I finally made it. And he was carrying me on his back. And I was in one of those, and I'm Generation X. So I was in one of those contraptions that's like aluminum frame backpack for your kid. So I was on that, and we used to sit way up above our parents' head. So my head was above his head, and I was like swirling his hair. And he's trying to walk, and he has long hair because he's a hippie, and his hair's in his face. And he's like, stop doing this. And I'm like, but I'm here, I arrived, and I was so excited. And I never really understood what that moment was until I was an adult, that I
Hmm.
had basically gotten all the way in. I had walked in completely at that point, and
So
it was
explain that because most people think your soul is just your soul with you. So it can be like out here, it can be in different stages coming in. What does
yeah,
that mean when a soul isn't completely in? How much access do you have to it?
not as much. Mm-mm. And also, even like through the years until recently, when the frequencies have been rising, we didn't have as much access to our soul.
Right.
So if you're watching this, your intuition has probably gotten better over the last five
Right.
years. And that's because the frequencies have risen and your soul has been able to anchor deeper and deeper into your body. And not only the one piece of your soul, because there's fractals of the soul, because you have an oversoul, but more pieces are starting to come in. So we just have an amazing amount of information that's starting to come into the body that we have access to.
So when you say fractals or other parts, that could also mean parallel parts from parallel lives, other
Mhm.
experiences, past lives. Does that mean that new skill sets can actually come in too?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
mean that I
So
could sing one day?
yes.
I can carry a tune and people won't leave the room.
Yeah. As long as you download that fractal. So ask your oversoul, which is your higher self at this point. Can I get the singing fractal?
The singing front. That one's missing. It's somewhere by the moon, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a guy, I can't remember his name, but he was always jumping, quantum jumping.
Hmm,
And he would go and he would kind of view another life and he would really get into it. And we have a multiverse. So he was viewing his other fractals and he
oh,
was
wow.
absorbing their information. But
Wow.
now instead of doing that, the fractal just comes in.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's we're becoming more filled out as a human being.
It's interesting you're saying that because I used to do a lot of past life and parallel work, right?
Mhm.
Or if you want to call it future life, whatever it is. And I haven't had anyone request one of those in a really long time
Mm-mm. Because we're just
because
absorbing them.
we're absorbing them. Yeah. Oh, I just got confirmation on that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
interesting.
it's so interesting. Yeah. And we're kind of coming into a really intense, beautiful time when we shift away from the 3D and the thinking of the 3D into the fifth dimension.
Right.
Because the 4D is basically like a bridge. So, and this is stuff that I learned about as a kid,
Yeah.
So I was so annoyed to be here. I will be honest. By the time I was 3, I was like, can I go now? This is so icky, and
Yeah.
boring. My favorite word was, this is so boring. Can I go? And I was just ready to leave, but I'm still here.
Thank
So
God
I'm
we need
waiting.
you.
Yeah. So it's been a wild ride, but just all the things that have been happening over the last 5 years have been really big for humanity in general.
Right.
And I don't think we totally understand what quantum really is.
No.
Yeah.
No, we
So,
don't. No, we
mm-mm,
don't because there's so many layers and so many parts, and we've also been programmed to believe that that's magic. Like,
yeah.
it's not part of the body. We can't measure it. I remember I was on a group call and there was a physician who was saying, well, we tested acupuncture and we found that it's just bunk. There is no such thing. There is no energy. I'm like, what did you use to test? Like, how did you come to that decision? I'm like, this is something that's thousands of years old that they use for people to actually have surgery instead of anesthesia. And now you're trying to test something like that. Do you even know what you're looking for? So
No,
interesting.
they didn't. And they did it on purpose. It
Yep.
was like when they debunked the natural medicine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, for me, like the quantum is this huge, we're in this massive consciousness. And that is the quantum. And a lot of people would call that God or source or oneness. And we are sparks of that. And we're out here experiencing different things. But when our soul goes home at night into the quantum consciousness, into the big oneness, we have these conversations about what are we going to do tomorrow? What's our plan for this next week? How are we going to push things forward? What do I want to do? And the conversations are getting more and more intense, and the changes are happening faster and faster. And that's because we're in a certain frequency now and we can support that.
Right.
So it's just an amazing time for humanity. and the changes are going to be massive. And you can heal from the quantum, like you can go and you can break your contracts that have kept you not doing so well in your body, but you can also reflect on what did that illness mean?
Right. What was
What
the lesson in it?
information? Yeah, what information am I missing?
Yeah.
So everything is made of light and frequency. And if we can just distill it down to that one thing, then we know that our body's made of light, information is made of light, and it's coming
Right.
into the body. So, what do we need to let go of? What information is holding us back from healing?
Yeah.
And it's been a massive healing endeavor over the last several years because in order to get into this frequency, we had to heal a lot of things.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about that because, before we started recording, we mentioned Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus. So when you think about the quantum world and the universe and how that exists and certain timelines exist.
Mhm.
So, one of the things I studied time quite a bit in a school in Italy, and we talked about every time you think of something, it exists. You've now created it. So
Yeah.
now there's a timeline that you have created, and now you have to take steps to make it happen. And you're the only one who's getting in the way. So you had
Mhm.
these two people, historical people, who talked about the rapture, it's even in the Bible, all of these things that were going to happen. How does something change? How does the destiny change from those other timelines? What goes into that?
The attention comes off of them. So enough of us said no to those timelines, which is why we didn't experience them. We didn't experience the flooding that Edgar Cayce predicted. Also, there was going to be like 300,000 people left, and that would be kind of it. And there were a lot of different predictions. There was a book called Robes, I think,
Mm.
from Penny Kelly, and she also predicted a really kind of bleak future. But I don't see any of that at this point. Now, we did have a big split. So some people, some parallels maybe experienced that, but
Right.
we didn't. And we're way past that point now.
So what does it
So
mean when you say we had a big split?
so we had a big split. 3D and 4D have split off. And at this point, I believe that they're dissolved.
Okay,
So
so when you say dissolved, if someone's energy frequency is 3D, are they still existing in this timeline with us and they're just in the periphery, or have they passed? Is like what happens to them?
they have passed and they have become a hologram if we want them to be in our periphery still.
Okay.
That's what I see happening. So
So
they
so
are
they
not
still
really
exist. They're like an NPC, non-player character
in our own mind.
in our mind.
Yeah. And if you have a family member that has done that, you are coming together as a family and saying, Grandpa still exists. He's going to be at the wedding or he's going to be at Christmas dinner, but you're witnessing a hologram that you've created to be there.
Yeah.
And you can see them looping. So when you meet an NPC, usually they say a lot of the same things over and over again. They behave the same way. And it's become more and more robotic than it used to be. So, because NPCs before the split could be an organic human body with an inner child or what I would call a human consciousness and just not progressing. But at this point,
So
they split away with the 3D and 4D.
okay, so those holograms that exist here, is there a soul?
No,
So they're just literally looping.
they're looping, they're part of the program, they're part of the matrix.
Right.
And we're asking for them to be there so that we feel comfortable.
Yeah. And
Yep.
so, what if you have a group of people and some people want that being there and others don't? What happens to their existence? I'm curious.
They'll be there for a while and they'll eventually dissolve.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people are on the exit right now, and I think a lot of them are NPCs that are exiting, and then a lot of them are just people that were like, well, my body can't match this frequency, so I have to exit, or their mind couldn't match it because there's a lot of unaliving going on.
Right. A lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So in this case, if people really understand that the Matrix was downloaded for a reason, that this is actually our truth, that, there's lots of Mr. Smiths around there. Those are basically the equivalent of an NPC, non-player character. And I know this is going to be, confusing for some people who don't quite understand it. And, we'll find out more about it as everything continues and we start to
Yeah.
learn the truth. And you have the ability to tap into our hidden history. So you go into the hidden history and what our true history is. And, even just watching, information and reading about Tartaria and the, all of that is fascinating how much of our history has been erased.
So much. And I do believe that there are libraries that will be revealed soon that
Mm,
have that information. But even the shape of the earth, which is the very first thing that my higher self pressured me to get on YouTube about. And I had this huge, I went through what was called the death of ego, and I cleared a lot of trauma. And when I did that, that night, I got all this information and I couldn't sleep. So I had to get up and write it down.
mm,
And a lot of it was visions, but I saw the shape of the earth. I was pulled up through this kind of frequency dome, but it appeared as kind of like ice or glass.
mm.
And I was wearing boots, almost like combat boots.
Wow.
And I could hear the squeak, against this ice, but I could see through it and I could see down at Earth. And then I also saw beyond where the dome was. And now we don't have a dome anymore, it's gone. And we just have the firmament, and the weather will become more and more erratic and start to change. So there's so many things that are going to be happening and so much more awareness that we're going to have. But I did a whole series on hidden history and the shape of the earth and how earth is an actual being playing a role
Right.
in this learning game that we're in, which is quantum.
So when you saw the shape, because there's flat earthers, there's round, and then there's toroidal field, where it's an energy center where their energy is going around. What did you see?
I saw the toroidal field.
The toroidal field, yeah.
Yeah. And the dome that we were in, which is a small portion of the top of the toroidal field,
Mhm.
makes it appear that it's flat.
Interesting.
So I think the flat earth theory that they used to have in all the books in the past was actually another psyop created by what I call the deletes
Mhm.
and all the resets that they were creating. They've been fooling humankind for hundreds of thousands of years. So that's finally ending. And that's why we're all here is
But
to,
why does it matter, the shape of the earth? What does it matter if it's flat, round, or toroidal shape? I'm like, there's some things that are important to talk about. Like, has no impact on me one way or another. I still have to get up and get in my car and drive someplace and come back. And it's just the debate and why that would be hidden from us is so interesting.
It's a catalyst, just like politics are a catalyst for awakening.
Mm,
So flat Earth was another catalyst for that. And realizing that NASA is actually has computer programmers and painters and all these people employed creating all those pictures that we think are from,
yeah,
telescopes and
yeah.
things. Um, it's a huge wake up call and also a test of common sense.
Right. But then you've got Elon Musk who's saying he's going into space. And then you have what's his name from Amazon? Jeff Bezos just did that blue whatever it was.
Right.
We don't need to go into that, but
Yeah.
it's just so interesting because I've always thought of space travel as going through portals.
Mhm.
And in traveling, it's more of as an interdimensional thing.
Yeah, it is because space is thick.
Mm,
So there are certain ships that can get through it, but why else would they be shaped like a disc? Because they can basically cut through it. It's more like jello.
mm,
And we have a firmament that's real. The firmament is real. Oxygen is real. We
mm,
have, an environment that's kind of like a terrarium. And one of Earth's names is Terra.
mhm.
So we need to just be more open minded and more aware, I think, of all the facets of what's going on versus just narrowing it down. Because we need to look at the macrocosm,
Right.
the macro, and then the micro makes more sense.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree with that. And I'm curious when you get in, because we could go into space and that whole thing for a while. We have areas to cover.
Yeah,
We mentioned about contracts, right? And people have contracts. Being raised Jewish, we talk about the Book of Life. And so
yeah,
one of our most holy days of the year is Yom Kippur, where God opens the book of life to determine if you're going to be here another year again. Are you a good person? I mean, that's the whole philosophy behind it. So when I heard about the Akashic records, I'm like, what? What? Oh my God, that's what they're talking about. So
mhm.
it's like hidden in our own face. I don't know if other religions use that same terminology, but what is the Akashic records and how do we influence them or can we?
Yeah. We can break our contracts. So if you've learned a lesson, then you break the contract. Um, Figuring out whether you've learned it or not, figuring out whether you want to continue it or not, that's all up to you, but you can break contracts. And that's what we've been doing to heal. We've been breaking contracts with our ancestors because maybe they created an illness and then it morphed into the genetics of your body. We've been breaking contracts with soul contracts because you plan what you're going to do before you come here.
Right.
And for me, and the pictures that we get are to explain things to us. But the picture that I got is I came with another being and we were friends and we came together and we were like in a very yellow, almost like being inside the sun. So I equated that with God source and going to a room and on the yellow wall was like a plasma screen and just punching in what we wanted
Hmm.
and then being born after that. And that's what my higher self showed me. I don't think it's exactly like that.
Yeah, I've
But
done hypnosis, the life between lives, where you can
mm,
actually see, you go, there's a actually like a movie room,
yeah,
theater, and they showed, getting a chance to see three different lives, picking different parents, and then you choosing which scenario would best fit the contracts and the lessons that you wanted. And there's a
right.
whole process that goes into choosing who you're going to have this work with. And then on top of that is free will. So I think about the probability of the miracles that we are,
Mm.
of achieving our goals with so many people and circumstances in our orbit is can't it's hard to wrap your brain around,
Yeah, but nothing is random. Everything is planned.
right?
So you're planning it all night long and then living it during the day. So it's like you are the player and then you integrate with the game piece
Okay.
every day in the learning game. And the game piece doesn't have the memory. So it's all about what can I do to help this body remember what we planned to do last night, you know? So it's a huge thing. But to me, like the life review at the end of the life, because I just participated in that with my father who just passed away. And that life review happens at the end, but it also happens at the beginning so that you can figure out what you want to do. And
So,
it's like a movie.
so when you think about the term synchronicity, this just came to me and I'm
Mhm.
curious. So, are synchronicities happening because I'm tapping more into the plan that I made the night before?
Yeah, because you're in flow, which is what all the universe wants us to do is just get into flow and relax and quit trying to control everything with our mind.
Yeah.
And once we do that, life is just so much more beautiful and easy and
So
fun.
that's where deja vu can come from too,
Mhm.
because we've already planned it. We've already gone into what we call the astral
Yeah.
plane, planned it out. It's like rehearsing for a play and then we're living it out the next day. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I never thought about it that way. That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
And time doesn't exist, so you could be up there for quite a while. I know a lot of your dreams are messages from the astral plane, especially now. But I remember when I was a kid and I had like 10 dreams. And my dad was obsessed with writing them down and interpreting them all. So I ran into the house because I was already living in my own little house because we were hippies. And, I was probably like 16, 15. And I ran in the house and I said, get ready. I've got them all. And I was hanging on to them and just spewing out dream after dream
Wow.
after dream. And he was writing them all down
How
and then
amazing
putting
to
them
have
on.
that.
Yeah.
Because I remember my son, he was about 11 years old and he was having night terrors and he was having dreams of things that were going to happen the next day, and it scared him. And it was before I was awake to anything. And I was taking him to a homeopath at the time, and the homeopath asked him if he'd like to shut that off. And he said yes. And so he did. And now I look back and I'm like, I just didn't know. I wish I could have taught him to manage it and
Yeah.
explained to him what it was. But he reads people really well. He's very psychic. So I don't know, at some point he'll open that back up again.
He probably will when he has a child that has the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
All the kids coming in now,
Yeah.
they're so aware and they're not going to lose any of their memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just going to be like superheroes of the future,
They're all
basically.
going to look at me and go, Mom, you were right all the time.
Yeah.
All that stuff we were scared of, and now you freaked us out.
Yeah, yeah. And if we could see everything, so getting to the ETs and the interdimensionals, if we could see everything, because we only see 1% of the light spectrum at this
Right.
point, then we would know who we are because they're all around us at all times. You don't have privacy. You think you do,
Yeah.
but you don't. And you don't really have walls either. You just have light that's slowed down to the point where it feels solid, just like your body. But
Yeah.
we're in for a lot of excitement.
It's so interesting because I was just talking to someone else about this. I watched a video this morning, I think, and it was about a woman. We have these rods in our eyes,
Mhm.
and it's either two or three, and she is an extra one.
Yeah,
So she can see colors and all kinds of things that we can't see, like
yeah.
millions of colors.
Mhm. I shared that video.
Okay, that's where I saw it because I
Yeah.
love you. Your Telegram has really great stuff on it. I always love it. It's more inspirational than depressing political stuff.
Well, and politics is a catalyst. I mean, I think people have gotten stuck in it,
Yeah,
you know. It's a catalyst. It's meant to awaken. And then the reason that things we feel have not moved fast enough, most of us that woke up like 2020 or before, we're like, when's it going to happen? When are things going to change? And it's been like, okay, well, you guys have to change first.
yeah,
And a lot of people were just focused on the outside for so long that they kind of got stuck there. And now the energies are forcing everybody to focus on the inside.
yeah.
And that is what's creating real change.
So interesting.
Mhm.
So when my question is when we were kind of talking about the extraterrestrials a little bit in interdimensional travel. When you talk about extraterrestrials and how we had come from different planets. So were we traveling interdimensionally, and how does that work with astrology? Because are they really planets up there, or what is it that's influencing us?
So, Earth is a being, and every planet, every star is some sort of being.
Hmm.
And we're seeing them in the way that works best for us. And when astrology is working, they're moving around so that they can basically translate down to us. This is a new energy that we're creating. And astrology is a beautiful clock, I would call it, of
Okay.
energy. And time doesn't really exist. So sometimes things get interrupted and redone too.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, but astrology right now is really helpful because those planets have personalities. They're big souls, and we don't realize that the Earth is actually quite small. So, compared to a soul, Earth is not very big. And think of
Really?
it as a game. So, Earth herself is a being, and she's also agreed to be our game board. So, she's here holding space for us, holding us here to help us because humanity forgot they were in the game because they were suppressed for so long. So the human soul is quite young, and everybody here that's like aware and awake has a really big soul paired with a human soul, and we are ascending the human soul. We're bringing it up and we're bringing it into awareness. So the rapture is actually awareness. And go and look up the root word, like what did it originally mean? What
Mm,
did rapture mean? And I think a lot of the Christ consciousness is coming into the body now.
right.
Um, And that's a whole nother subject. But he was quantum. He was a quantum being. He knew who he was, Jesus,
Yeah.
and whatever you want to call him, Jesus, Yeshua. There's a lot of confusion there, and the Bible was rewritten over and over and over,
Mhm.
and a lot of stuff is missing. So we have to kind of be aware that every single thing that we've seen here has been for suppression, and we're changing that now. So, not to get too hooked into anything that was basically from the 3D.
Right.
Yeah.
So because the 3D is gone and there's still people fear mongering.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one thing that I've worked really hard on for me is to stay as neutral as possible, because I also know that a lot of these things are playing out for a reason, to wake people up. Even to the point where I was laughing when people, I didn't watch the Kentucky Derby, but I saw the videos afterwards. And I mean, when you talk about sovereignty and journalism are the two names
Yeah.
of the horses. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, how
And
do you
that's
not
the
see that?
universe.
But how do you not see that? I mean, it was
Right.
just like so in your face what they're doing.
Yeah. It's so in your face. And it's the universe. It's the souls saying, okay, well, let's do this. And it's a massive catalyst. But the people that don't see it are the people that are not real.
So would you say those who have not woken up yet are not going to at this point?
Probably not, but we have to also remember that a lot of people are awake in a different way.
Right,
So they're not necessarily awake because of politics. Maybe they're awake because of spirituality.
right.
Maybe they're awake in a different way that we wouldn't recognize. So we have to be aware of that too. If you look into somebody's eyes, you can tell if the spark of life is within them. And that's important when you decide whether who am I talking to? Am I talking to somebody I created because I wanted to learn something, have them help me with my groceries? You know, why did I create them? Or am I talking to a soul? And do I see the spark of life in their eyes? Are their eyes alive?
Mm. So it also gives you insight about not getting angry.
Yeah,
Like, don't engage.
that's
It's
the
like,
point.
I know, but when you spend a lot of time around people who don't share the same values or don't share the same belief systems that you do, and then I had to look into, why is it important for me that all these people believe what I do? Is that a form of control? And
Yeah.
so when I pulled back, I could see their heart, right? And then
Mhm.
I could just go there and have compassion. And something really interesting happened to me when there was all this stuff about the MS-13 gangs, and they're all, being sent out. And they were showing pictures of them getting lined up, being deported. And all of a sudden I had a flash of them all at 3 years old. And my heart sunk. And
Yeah.
I thought to myself, what must have happened? I'm not saying that they should be freed or anything. I just went into a place of compassion. What must have happened that's that horrible that they have a life where they need to rape and murder and rob and kill and, like all of these things, that's normal for them?
Right. Right. And how many of them are, especially at this point, how many of them are a soul
Yeah,
too? And has it just left and are they a hologram at this point?
yeah,
So there's a lot of factors going into every single thing that we see and do every time that we're here during the day.
yeah.
Um, and it's very trippy, I would say.
So what do we have to look forward to? What do you see us moving towards? Where do you see us going?
I see almost like a Jetson style
Oh,
kind of
good.
existence. Yeah.
Love them.
Um, being aware of who we are, having technology that just responds to us and helps us because it's basically something that we created. It's part of our consciousness. And living a life where we're inspired and we're doing the things that we like, that we're inspired to do, and sharing those with others.
Yeah.
And coming into community and exploring more of what consciousness is by exploring other planets,
Mm,
exploring the atmosphere, exploring inner earth. The sky's the limit, really. And honestly, the sky is not the limit. We can go and do whatever we want. All of it depends on our own consciousness and how willing we are to believe that we can do it. There is no there's no barrier except for what we create within us. So the parallels will separate again as we go through this next big step.
yeah.
And after that next big step, where we have a reevaluation of currency, where people realize that they are abundant and they can create, and also the systems that are old and corrupted fall and the new systems begin to rise, the parallels will separate, and people that have done more work on letting go of old stuff will experience things faster,
Mm,
and people that are still like maybe they're still hooked into the politics or whatever, they'll do things at a little slower rate, but they're still experiencing ascension.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because they're talking about disclosure. What's it? Tucker Carlson just did an interview with a woman who talked about all these underground cities.
Love that video.
I was like, we've been hearing about this for so long, but to actually have it start to come out, I didn't expect that to come out so soon. So to hear about that and the train systems and what, the all of that technology, because I was in the 1970s, I grew up in New Jersey, and the Concorde plane flew over my house every Friday. There was one flight because it was so loud. But you could get to Europe in the 1970s in 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
2.5 hours. So you're telling me all these years later that they haven't caught up on that technology, that we're still on the same roads, the same technology with our cars, all of these things, it just none of this ever made sense.
Mm-mm. No, because they've been hiding technology forever
Yep.
from us.
Yep.
And it's so hidden that they could be invisible and we can't see them.
Yeah.
So we're vibrating higher and higher. So if you watch the movie Lucy,
Yes.
and she illustrates if a car goes faster and faster and eventually it goes so fast that you can't see it anymore, that's what the ETs are doing. They're vibrating at a higher rate, but we're also vibrating higher and higher constantly. And pretty soon we're going to be vibrating at the same rate. And they're going to be our buddies. Like, let's go have coffee. Let's go have some kind of crazy effervescent drink. Then, maybe for us it will make us drunk, and for them they'll just be like, oh, it's a health drink,
Yeah.
you know.
And we were talking about this before we started recording, but I've had incidents where I'm starting to see shadows like in the corner of my eye.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting because my other question is, So we are a combination of a number of different species, correct? We can have, we're
Yeah.
not all like, you've got the Orions, you've got Pleiadians, you've got Sirius, you've got the Avians, you've got Lyrans.
Mhm.
Um, so you've got
Pleiadians.
all these. So we have become kind of a combination of them in our own DNA. So question, how, who are you attracting when you say an ET is coming to you? Are they based on your DNA or are they just say they're just like, oh, these are light workers, we want to help them?
They're based on who you agreed to meet the night before.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, they're based on like a lot of us are in parallels and we're in a body of an ET. Some of us have an ET soul. There's different
Mm,
soul groups, and some of us have an elemental soul, and some of us have an architect or an angelic soul or
yeah.
dragon soul or a titan. It just depends. And there's so much to explore, and it's really fun. And when you first meet an ET, like my first meeting, I just closed my eyes and pretended it wasn't real and went back to sleep. And then the second one, I was really rude and I said, what are your intentions? Because it was in the middle of the
Yeah.
night and they
Yeah.
showed up. And of course, that was annoying to the ET. So she took off. But
Well,
it's just kind of, we're learning and we're learning in stages and we're getting there.
so cool.
Yeah.
So, and anything that we haven't covered that you think needs to be said before we sign off?
I would say just get excited. It's
Yeah.
time to get excited. It's time to step into joy.
Yeah.
And it's time to do the things that you're inspired with instead of thinking about the things that you're not allowed to do anymore. Because most of the beings that are not allowing you to do something don't actually exist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, quick question I had, because we talk about the idea of free energy coming back in and that
Oh,
it
yeah.
already exists, yet there's all this, and from a political standpoint, they're talking about bringing back coal plants and oil and all of this within. Is that in order to create structure that people can maintain jobs and transition people slowly? Or is that a different timeline? Or are they just going through the motions? What's going on there? Because that confuses me.
I think they're just going through the motions. They're saying you didn't create you didn't create the right timeline for yourself. So when they started to use lithium ion batteries and which is really toxic and solar panels are toxic, but you could have a perpetual motion machine that runs the whole house and it could be run on magnets.
Yeah.
So all the new stuff that really matters is in the process of being discovered or being built right now. And that will take over all that stuff that they're bringing up. But they're trying to get people to think with common sense, I think.
Right.
Because when a Tesla vehicle explodes, or when they're telling you your lithium ion battery in your phone is so dangerous that you have to have the flight attendant come and get it out from, in between the seats because you could cause the plane to, like
Explode, catch
explode.
fire.
That's a problem. Like, we want to think about, like, why is that not okay? What kind of toxins are actually in those batteries?
Yeah.
You know, So we have to think about what do we want to create for our future? And we need to have common sense and more awareness around it instead of believing other people. Yeah,
Wow. Well, this was a fascinating conversation. Thank you
so fun.
so much. I always love talking to you.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much. And to let people know, Honey and I do a group healing together. It's a quantum healing. Our next one is in May 23rd.
Yeah.
12 o'clock Eastern and 4 o'clock Eastern. You can come to one or both, depending upon how much healing you can tolerate in one day.
Yeah. Totally true.
And I'll have the links below, and it's only $44. And we'd love to see you here. And we're working on a new platform, so we'll see if that's going to be available for the next healing or not
Yeah, I feel like it will be more available in June.
in June. Okay.
However, you can get onto that platform now and it's free and it's called Step Into Your Power. And you can start to meet your soul tribe. So stepintoyourpower.com.
Okay.
And there's chat groups, there's meditations that we've created. There's so much in there already. And it's going to be a great hub, like a great gathering space for people to find the things that they want to find. And also to say, listen, I'm doing this project and I want to see these kind of people apply to help me with it, or these are the kind of things that I'm going to be doing. People will be able to go in and basically share who they are and what they're doing for the future of humanity in there. So I'm really excited about it.
No, it's a
Yeah.
really cool thing. And it's a great place for us to find each other because how many times are people lonely? Like I don't
Yeah.
have other people like me to talk to because I'm surrounded by NPCs who think I'm crazy.
Yeah. Because the ones that we were here to awaken and decided not to awaken, they have already gone.
Mm,
And then we had some, we have a lot of people now that are leaving and they woke up, but maybe they just couldn't hold the frequency.
right. But they're still ascending,
They're still ascending.
still
Everybody's
ascending,
ascending. Yeah.
just not in their bodies.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's always a pleasure, honey. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Thank
much. This was so
you.
much fun.
So,
And we'll see you shortly. Hold on.
okay.